So the new White House national security strategy talks about wanting Ukraine to survive as a viable state, but is being asked to give up territory that Ukraine holds to Russia compatible with being a viable state? I mean, do you think Donald Trump would regard himself as the leader of a viable state if he was asked to give up parts of Texas to Mexico?
But you're actually conflating two things, and this is.
Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Welcome back. Today we're breaking down a heated exchange on BBC Newsnight featuring former diplomat Carla Sands. Watch closely as she tries to defend the administration's foreign policy on the Russia-Ukraine conflict, only to get hit with tough questions about free speech. The host directly confronts her on the stark double standards between lecturing European allies about censorship while actively targeting critics and media outlets at home. Stick around for the end. The hypocrisy unraveling on live television is something you definitely need to see. Let's jump straight into the clip.
So the new White House national security strategy talks about wanting Ukraine to survive as a viable state, but is being asked to give up territory that Ukraine holds to Russia compatible with being a viable state? I mean, do you think Donald Trump would regard himself as the leader of a viable state if he was asked to give up parts of Texas to Mexico?
But you're actually conflating two things, and this is irrelevant. The fact is that Ukraine has no pathway to win this war. President Trump and his team are attempting to, I believe, de-escalate this war and get this process on a good glide path to find first a ceasefire and then an end to the hostilities. He wants to make sure that Ukraine, and you can read that right in the national security strategy. It's not a long read. It's available publicly. It's a public document. So we can see that President Trump wants Ukraine to remain a sovereign nation, as he hopes the rest of Europe and the UK will remain sovereign nations. At America First Policy Institute, we look at the America First agenda and we say, let's have our allies have a nation first agenda, secure borders, controlled immigration, protection of the rule of law, affordable and abundant energy, protection of your beautiful culture, freedom of speech, if that's part of your constitution, the fact that every nation should put their citizens first, a credible defense, make sure that you can be a viable country and secure. We need that in every one of our allies.
Now, a big theme for Donald Trump is free speech. And in this new White House document, it accuses Europe of censorship of free speech and suppression of political opposition. But isn't that exactly what the Trump administration is doing in the United States? I'm thinking of how in September, President Trump celebrated ABC's suspension of the critic Jimmy Kimmel, his show. That was great news for America. And in July, Donald Trump filed that lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch over its reporting of his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. So it's OK for President Trump to limit free speech in the US, but not OK for that to happen in Europe.
Not at all. So free speech is the foundation of our shared, I would say especially UK and US, our shared values. How we got free speech in the United States was from the UK, from hundreds of years ago. And so if we can maintain that, we will be able to have open societies. Once you allow one side to decide what is acceptable speech and not acceptable speech, you have a totalitarian government, because then you will have no free exchange of ideas. And it is happening. Just in Ireland, Enoch Burke, a teacher, because he wouldn't use a student's pronouns. Sorry, he's been jailed now and he'll be in prison over Christmas.
Carla Sands, may I politely say that you're evading my question? And the question is that Donald Trump seems to be happy to go to courts to impose limits on free speech in your country and then lecture Europe about imposing limits on free speech over in Europe.
If he sues a network or entity, a newspaper, it's because they have done something that's broken the law. Otherwise, he wouldn't waste his time. He absolutely works to maintain his reputation. He doesn't allow himself to be taken advantage of by these networks, and most of them have been working lockstep with the leftist Democrats in the United States.
But if you believe in free speech, if you believe in that, I think it's the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, that is an unequivocal principle. You stand by that. You don't go to the courts when you don't like what people are saying.
Well, when it's unfair or illegal activity, you do go to the courts. But absolutely, I would say most people who are part of the circle of America First do believe absolutely in free speech. We're really worried about this Digital Services Act that the EU has passed, because I do believe that that is a kind of war against the United States. They are working to fine companies like X, Elon Musk, because he allows free speech. They're attempting to censor the speech in the United States of U.S. citizens. That is blatantly not okay. And it is, I believe, it's a gray zone act of war and must end.
Carla Sands, thank you for talking.
Looking at this interview, the level of sheer hypocrisy on display is almost unbelievable. You have political figures traveling across Europe lecturing sovereign nations about fundamental liberties and First Amendment principles. Yet their own track record tells a completely different story. When you champion free speech abroad, but spent years demanding the firing of late-night hosts, suing major news outlets for critical coverage, and targeting corporate critics, your arguments completely lose credibility. It becomes a classic case of selective outrage, demanding absolute expression for yourself and your political allies, while attempting to penalize anyone who dares to dissent. During the interview, Carla Sands continuously dodges the core questions, attempting to pivot toward European policy rather than addressing concrete examples of executive overreach at home. Defending legal action against the press while claiming to be a champion of the First Amendment is an impossible position to hold. You simply cannot defend the indefensible without exposing the double standard. True commitment to constitutional principles means defending expression, even when it's politically inconvenient or critical of leadership. Weaponizing political power against critics while preaching about liberty abroad is pure political theater. Do you think politicians have any right to lecture other nations on free speech when they target critics at home? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit the thumbs up button to help boost this in the algorithm. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notification bell icons so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.